What's up, everybody? Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and I am back from Germany. I'm back from Euroblast. We missed one video, but we're back on it. And I got back from Euroblast, which was an amazing experience, by the way. You should totally go. It was awesome. I met so many cool people. I was happy to see that there was a new single. I know that I've heard that some other singles have dropped as well, but I was happy to see that there was a new single from Alluvial, because Alluvial is dope. If you don't know about them, I'd be surprised. But I first heard Alluvial when I saw them live, and I believe, I can't remember the name of the tour, but that was a tour. It was I believe, I might be getting it wrong, but Distant played, Carcosa played. I think Carcosa and Angel Maker played. Johnny was on double duty. Lorna Shore played. Signs of the Swarm played. It was crazy. And if I remember the set, Alluvial played. And the song that really gripped me, I know for a lot of people, was 40 Stories, which is awesome. But the rest of their discography is really good too. So after the show, I went and I listened to them and I was like, dang, these guys are awesome. And so I'm excited to talk about this song because I don't think I've talked about Alluvial on the channel, and they're very worth talking about. Kevin Muller is their vocalist. He has an excellent tone across his whole range. And I know that Wes Hauch does some singing. I don't know if we'll hear that in the song. But anyways, I'm just excited. So I'm talking. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I'm a metal vocalist myself. I'm in a band called Kardashev. We're on Metal Blade Records. That's cool, I guess. We released an album. You can check it out if you want. I'm also a full-time vocal coach. I specialize in teaching harsh vocal techniques, teaching people how to do stuff like safely and efficiently. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, this video will be interesting to you, because I like to pause and talk about vocal technique and everything like this. One quick disclaimer before we jump into it. So I came back from Germany with a rocking case of laryngitis, just from overuse. Honestly, I was talking for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. And at the end of the third day, I was kind of wrecked. It's mostly gone. I've had 3 full days of vocal lessons, but be kind. I usually leave my mistakes in the videos. If I do a scream and I flub it, I usually leave that in there. Just because it's easier for editing, and we're all human, right? But the vocals may not sound as beautiful as they normally do. So anyways, that's okay. We're here to focus on Alluvial anyway. So let's check out Bog Dweller, which is a sick name, by the way. And I love kind of like the old school, kind of blurred out, sort of glowy intro slide or that we have here. So yeah, let's talk about it. Alluvial, Bog Dweller. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. Yeah, I pause a lot to talk about vocal technique. So one thing if you've never heard Alluvial before, so far, this is a good song for you to be introduced to, because one thing I love about them, just overall compositionally, is they sound technical. How do I put this? Technical without sounding up their own ass. You know what I mean? They shred, they do like polyrhythmic stuff. They get kind of crazy and asymmetrical in their riffs, but there's still that groove. They're still very constantly in that pocket, which is awesome. So let's talk about vocals here, because that's what we're here for. One thing I really like about Kevin's tone is how even and crispy it is, right? Now, of course, if you are even brand new to metal vocals, like if you started listening to metal a week ago, right, and metal's a very broad term, but that a lot of metal vocals or screams are going to sound different, right? And we have variation partially because of the vocal style, right? False chord, fry, the grandma and grandpa dichotomy, which is not the end all be all of vocal distortion, by the way. Those are going to sound different. We also have variation within each of those segments, right? And so sometimes we can have like a really chunky, really like flubby distortion, which we hear a lot in like old school death metal or bands like Black Tongue, sometimes in bands like Job for a Cowboy, things like that. And that's where you have like this really like, you know, right? It's really open, really, really floppy. And then we can also have distortion that's a lot more crisp, right? That's a lot more crisp. There's like, right? Now, again, I'm not going to do a whole video of false chord versus fry, but a lot of that does come from the difference in the distortion mechanism that we're using. However, we can bring other things in as well. Generally speaking, when we are getting a really crispy, a really like TV staticky, like tone on our scream, we're using a scream that's a little bit more air efficient, right? The truth of the matter is that like old school breath distortion, false chord, I was going to do quote unquote, but I actually really like that term. I heard it on Reddit. I can't remember the guy. A guy posted like a false chord tutorial on Reddit, and he used the term breath distortion. I was like, that's really good. That's not a very air efficient scream, just by nature of what it is, right? It's very breathy. We have this, and generally speaking, we can't hold it as long as a fry or a more compressed, like either a retinoidal, or some other type of growl as well. Now, with what I hear from Kevin here, now I've not caught one of his streams, so I've never heard him do vocals outside of production or outside of being live, but he doesn't sound like he's exceptionally loud, right? What I hear is a strong use of even airflow, right? A strong understanding of utilizing resonance space to build volume and tone, and then just really good tongue positioning, right? We'll talk more about that as the song goes on. I don't want to front load the video too much, but yeah, like listen to how his tone, at least so far, is very like versus right. Anyways, let's keep going. But so far, very good. That was sick. So there are a couple things I'm noticing about his voice that I really, really like. One thing is I really appreciate the way he's like interfacing with the song. And let me explain what I mean by that. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but the song has a very rhythmic, like da-dum sound, right? And what we have from him is we have a more barky vocal, but we're not going like full on staccato, right? And that's really nice because it's helping me kind of stay in the groove. That's helping me sort of like bob my head back and forth. And a lot of times when we talk about vocals, we're talking about vocal production, right? Here's how your resonance should sit. Here's how your throat should be positioned. Here's how you should be breathing in and out and supporting your airflow. And those things are all really important. But once we have the tone, once we're able to do something like, right? What do we do with it? How do we use it to supplement a song, right? And that's what we are as vocalists. Sometimes we're in the forefront of the song. Sometimes we're more in, in the rhythm or in the wash of the song. But at all times, we are playing some sort of support role, right? And so I don't know if this was a conscious decision or if he was just grooving. But either way, I love the fact that his vocals have like this punchy, like da do 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 da do do da. But he's not fully letting off the gas. Also, there was one spot I'm going to go back and try to find it because it sounded sick. Where I think the word he said was hollow. It's hard to understand metal vocals. I'm not going to pretend it's not, because that's a lie. But I love how it's a very Travis Ryan thing to do. And anybody who watches the channel knows that I'm kind of a Travis Ryan simp. This shifting forward of the lips and the tongue to drop the tone of a scream downward. This is a really good example, and I'll show you what I mean. This is a really good example of how sometimes when we're trying to bring our screams lower or higher, or just change the timbre of the scream, right? Maybe we want to not be doing the same tone all the time, but we also don't want to go too far away. We want to kind of keep it in the same range. We don't necessarily have to do things in our throat. In fact, one of the best things that we can do as metal vocalists is hold on to a steady tone and then augment that tone with the oral space, the front of the mouth and the back of the mouth. This is really valuable, right? So I don't remember exactly how it went, but like I can give you an example of this, right? So when we're talking embouchure, we're talking about the shape of the opening of the mouth, right? You can kind of remember it. It's not exactly the same thing, but embouchure kind of sounds like aperture, right? So right? So if I have like I'll just do like oh, right? So if I have this, there's my distortion, my like TV staticky distortion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go how, right? How. I'm going to bring my lips forward. I'm going to bring my tongue sort of down. I don't know if that's exactly how he does it, but that's how I'm going to do it, right? How. And when I do that, you're going to notice that it changes the sound of the scream, gets a little bit more resonant, gets a little bit lower. And what I don't have to do is I don't have to totally change the way I'm just distorting, right? So here we go. It sounds right? This is a thing that usually is a really simple little trick. If you're having trouble getting your vocals lower because you're always like dropping the distortion into your throat, well, instead of thinking low, think forward and kind of down, right? Anyways, I'm going to go back. I'll go back to like a minute 10. Also, I'm not going to comment on it too much because I don't know dick about guitar. But the Alluvial's got some riffs, boys. Alluvial's got some riffs. Let's keep going. Okay, so I mentioned, sorry for the hard cut there. So I mentioned that, you know, Kevin's got a really nice TV static type of distortion, right? And this is a big subject that would take out probably a whole video of its own to describe, right? One of the easiest ways that we can get that TV static, that like distortion, is with a fry scream, right? That's a really easy way to go about it. Now, with the laryngitis and the fact that I don't do a lot of false chord or fry anyway, it's going to sound like shit right now. But there's no shame in my game, right? So I'll show you like the bare bones basic sound, right? The very first beginning sound. Now, obviously, you know, this, that doesn't really translate into a scream very well. However, it can help us kind of understand what's going on. You know, we have the medial edges of our vocal folds, right? And they're flopping around. And when they're open and a little bit more loose, we get this pop, 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 right? We can take that behavior of the vocal folds and we can transfer it to different places, right? And we can put that a little bit more in like the break space, right? And again, I've still got a little swelling from the laryngitis, so be kind to me. But if I'm here, more around the vocal break space, that and I kind of like relax, I get kind of that sound, right? Now, I can also approach, I'm thinking too fast, right? Okay, so that's a way that we can get kind of a TV static sound. And then of course you would lean into it, you would use your lower abdominal muscles, put sort of like that of air through there, and you would get a cool sound, right? But let's say you're not a fry vocalist, right? You don't do a lot of fry, such as myself, right? With all the acid reflux I deal with, plus the fact that I'm not really a big fan of the fry sound. Sorry, no offense to anybody. Let's say you're more of a false chord guy like me. Well, you can still get a lot of these TV staticky sounds, right? And this is kind of a cool thing about vocals and why I think that, you know, the false chord fry dichotomy is useful at first, but then eventually we kind of need to move away from it, right? But let's say I take this open, relaxed false chord, this like very old school kind of like, I'm going to do a little cargria to help myself get there. Right? But I want it to be tighter, right? Well, what I'm not going to do is and when I say tighter, I don't mean like the vocal folds. I'm talking about the sound, the way the sound is perceived from to, right? Well, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to squeeze my vocal cords. Not necessary, right? What I am going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of engagement, a little bit of closure at the top of the throat, just behind the tongue, right? Now, sometimes this can be hard to manage. So if this is difficult, don't worry about it. It takes time. But what that's going to do is that's going to change the quality of my voice to like a kind of like this, right? Now, if I release, you can hear that my vocal cords are not being pressed together unnecessarily. We really want to be careful if we're pressing our vocal cords together and then putting extra air underneath, because that can cause a lot of subglottal pressure and that can cause pain, strain, vocal damage, right? So I'm here, right, and it can feel either like I've talked about this in other videos, either like a sort of swallowed Kermit the Frog tone, or it can be a little bit more high of like a sort of a transatlantic accent, say haha, right? And if I have that space, essentially what's going to happen is the tissues above my vocal cords are going to be closed in slightly, and that's going to cause those to rattle as well. And so I can take this hey, right? A lot of times when people do this, the distortion falls back, and you want to supplement this with a good understanding of like singing or screaming into your mask, right? And that right there, it takes a long time. That sound took me quite a while to develop. That sound that builds on a false chord bass. If you listen to me relax the top of my throat, you'll hear me sort of snap back right into a false chord, right? Sometimes people mistake this for fry because it does kind of sound, especially in a mix like fry, but it's totally separate. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but that is one way that you can get more of a TV static sound on your vocals if you're looking for that and you're not a fry guy such as myself. Anyways, let's keep going because this is sick. Some good's gonna happen. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pause the video. So it sounds like in his lower space, he is opening up and relaxing into more of a traditional false chord sound. Maybe not entirely, maybe not all the way. He's not going full like, 1990s, like, right? But we are getting some of that as we dip down low, right? Now, this is a really great place to start. This is a really great thing to think about, because one thing that I always like to sort of prep my students with is the fact that obviously, with fry, it's a little bit separate. But these sounds are sounds that we're actually built to make. This is a very important thing to realize, because a lot of times, people will get concerned, and understandably so, that metal vocals are inherently like really, 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 really dangerous. And I would never say that metal vocals are 100% risk-free, but you can do them for 10, 15, 20 years, the rest of your life without any issues, if you understand that your body is built to make distortion, right? That's part of the reason that that's part of the way that we clear our throats, we keep from choking, is being like, and just like anything else, what we can do is we can take that, which is not really very healthy to do all the time, but we can focus on ways to make it healthy, right? And there are a lot of different ways to do this, many of which I go over. I do have an online course called False Chord Fundamentals. If you're interested, if you're either brand new or you've been doing vocals for a while, but something just feels weird. Now, I have had this question come up quite a bit, which is kind of interesting because of the title, but no, I don't go over fry in False Chord Fundamentals. I probably will release a fry e-course down the road, but it's probably a ways off. Anyway, if we're thinking about getting this rattly tone, one of the best things we can do is we can think about the fact, and really metal vocals in general, right? And you know what, singing in general, I'm going to broaden it out. If you feel like you are having to do a lot of crazy, weird contortion, you are probably moving in a direction that you don't need to be. Even when we make crazy sounds like this, right? If I go, oh geez, I don't know. I do this one a lot. Even if I do that, like, right, that sounds like super crazy and inhuman. But if we, well, I hope so. If we take apart these elements, I'm not really actually doing anything crazy. I'm just doing a couple specific things at the same time. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just doing kind of like a higher placed false chord. Hey, 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 nah. Right, that's it. Nah. I'm curling my tongue forward, which super relaxed, nothing risky there, no strain there. That turns it into right, and then I'm allowing myself to make like a little like a gurgly sound, like I'm hawking a loogie, right, right. Put that together, which is just right. That's the three things happening together, and then I do this to add some more resonance space. Right, and it sounds crazy. So when we're approaching these vocals, it's important to understand that no matter how crazy we sound, we are building on mechanisms that, when used properly, we're meant to use, right? And I think that's part of the reason that Kevin's voice here sounds so relaxed and so controlled, no matter what he's doing. Now, I don't know if he has classical training or really any training. I don't know that about him, but his airflow is so even, I wouldn't be surprised if he does, right? And I was talking with one of my students today. I can feel myself getting ready to ramble, so I'm going to rein this in. But I was talking with one of my students today about how a lot of times we think about breathing as something to just kind of check, like, you know, put the check mark on it and move past. But in actuality, it's really important to have a deep understanding of how our airflow works, right? So when we hear him moving, and I'm hoping he does it again, this whole long thing was to prep me to say this one thing to you. When we hear him moving from those really like, I don't want to say tight because that might make you hear me say your muscles should be tight. Crispy. When we hear him moving from these really crispy, distorted mids to the more rattly distorted lows, you will notice his airflow doesn't die out. He doesn't have I'm going to try to do it. He doesn't have like a, it doesn't, right? It doesn't fall apart. It's, you know, this is going to be hard with a little laryngitis, but let's give it a try. So I'm here. That's going to be a little too hard right now. But my point is that his air doesn't fall apart, right? His air stays steady. It stays even. He has consistent power, right? And a lot of that comes from understanding how airflow works. Now, I won't give you a whole breathing lesson here, but it is in the e-course if you'd like. And I talk about breathing in a ton of my other videos. So if you want a bunch of free content, that's it. It's all here. But anyways, let's hope he does it again. That sort of drop from that mid to low. You can listen for how the airflow stays consistent, even though the distortion seems to loosen up a little bit. Let's hear what's going to happen here, because I have no doubt it's going to be absolutely chunk. What the fuck? Holy shit. Oh my God. What an outro. Ugh. That was flavorful. So my favorite part of a song tends to be the outro. I'll listen through a boring song if it's got a good outro. That was not a boring song. That was a great song start to finish. But that outro, oh my God. Oh my God. See, this is a really good example of what I was talking about, right? We had a lot going on, but it wasn't over the top cacophonous, right? We had some old school vibes like that, those like pinch harmonics, that brown, 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 right? That kind of felt reminiscent of an old school vibe for me, but it wasn't like, hey, we're doing old school metal, right? It very much was modern. It very much was their sound. And then we had some of those open chimey, like black metal chords. Those I think of bands like Behemoth. I think of bands like Dark Funeral. I think of bands like that. And being a vocalist and being a vocal teacher, right? I gotta say, mad props to Mr. Muller for not doing vocals over that. What a classy move! That's what I'm fucking talking about. So I'm talking about this is what I'm saying, right? This is an example of what it's like to. Okay, so it's gonna sound like I'm pitting people against each other, and I'm not, right? But you have people who can make really cool sounds. Okay, they're those people who, are on Instagram or Reddit or wherever, TikTok, and they hold up their phone and they sound like an absolute monster. And you're just like, how the fuck? That's crazy, right? And then you've got people who are vocalists, right? Now, oftentimes these groups have strong crossover. If you're a vocalist, that doesn't mean that you can't make crazy sounds. And if you primarily make crazy sounds on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, that doesn't mean you can't be a vocalist. There's a lot of like bleed over between those groups, but being able to make a bunch of crazy sounds is only the beginning. That is the first step to being a vocalist. The next step, maybe not the next step, but a very important step, is understanding what to do on a song. And goddamn, was that the right choice or what? Oh my goodness. It just bled confidence. You know what I'm saying? To me, I don't know what he was thinking in the studio. I wasn't there. I've only ever spoken to the guy very briefly at a show, and it was like one of these things like, hey man, good job. You should come on the channel sometime. One of those moments, right? But like, I feel like in the studio, they were like, what do you want to do here? And he stood back and he thought about the song. This is all conjecture. And he's like, you know what? I sounded like a badass up until the end. Song does, like, my job's done. This part is fucking awesome on its own. I'm just going to let it do its thing. That's a classy choice, right? Man, I wanted to talk more vocals and I cannot remember what I was going to say. Shit. Well, let me just give you some general advice, right? So most of the time I work with beginners. I do get the occasional advanced vocalist through. I get a lot of intermediate vocalists, but it's mostly beginners. I'm not really sure why that is, but having taught all those groups, I can say that beginners are actually my favorite. My favorite people to teach tend to be the people who are brand new, or they've been making sounds for a couple years, but they have no idea what they're doing, or that sort of thing, right? So I'm going to talk to that group of people right here. If you hear these types of vocals, there are two things that I want you to think about, right? Number one, obviously, blah, blah, blah. Don't compare yourself to him. Yeah, we all know that. Number one, despite how crazy inhuman these sounds are, or these sounds come across, they are natural. And when done properly, they are easy to produce. Okay. The second thing is that it's very important to follow your voice in a sense of comfort. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times people will, especially if they're self-teaching, they will find a point of distortion and it sounds cool, but it does not feel comfortable. And so they prioritize the fact that it sounds cool and they press into it. And then eventually, very often, they come out with a scream that is admittedly awesome, but they can't do it for more than 2 minutes. Right. And then maybe they lose their upper range or they're sore the next day. Right. What you should do is you should follow your comfort. If that means that, you're doing false chord and it's just no matter what you do, it's painful. Right. You can either talk to me, talk to another coach. You can check out my e-course or somebody else's e-course, or you can just switch. Right. Just follow sounds that are comfortable. That's what I did. Right. And so if you hear this and you're wanting to go about it, make sure you're thinking about a lot of these fundamentals. Make sure you're thinking about like, what does diaphragmatic breathing even mean? What does it mean to breathe low, right? And a good place to start is with one of two baseline sounds, right? And I'll show you those right now. The first one is like a basic false chord noise, right? Which should feel very relaxed, very loose, nothing crazy happening in the throat. You've seen the tutorials all over the place. There are only really so many ways to do this, right? One of my favorite ways is like a let's take it back to 2004. That's like the exasperated, like, somebody is nagging you and you're like, all right, I'll get to it. Seriously, this is crazy. Leave me alone, right? Or like the very gentle little throat clear. Once you have that with no voice, shift to an upward vowel. And if you can do this, hang out there for a while. Turn it to yeah. And there you have, is that very amazing? No, but there you have a basic false chord sound. Now, if you're going the fry direction, where's my water? I don't know. If you're going the fry direction, right? Again, don't worry about sounding crazy. Focus on being comfortable, right? A lot of people disagree with this, but I've had a lot of success showing students fry this way, right? We're going to drop our voice here. This is not your scream. Anybody popping their knuckles and getting ready to fire up their keyboards, this is not your scream, okay? But what does that feel like? What's that sensation? It's poppy. It's not squeezed. We don't need to press our vocal cords really hard and make any creaky door noises today, right? And that's a really low space. What if instead of the floor being here, chest voice lower? What if it was head voice, really loose, really weak head voice, oh my God. Oh my God. Right? And when your vocal cords aren't a little bit puffy from laryngitis, you'll get a really nice you'll get a really nice TV static sound, I promise. This is a good example of following your comfort, because now I'm frustrated and I'm like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get a really good sound. You're going to see, but I need to listen to my body, and my body's saying like, hey, you're not completely over the laryngitis yet. So stop talking and drink some warm tea and relax. So that's what I'm going to do. Anyways, this video was a little bit rambly, but that's what happens when I'm excited. I'm a rambler. And this song, Bog Dweller by Alluvial, was sick as shit. I really love that outro. I'm going to go listen to it like 40 more times. And that's all I know. So great job, Alluvial guys. Very much appreciate your hard work. Thank you all for watching. If you're interested in learning some false chord, check out my e-course, cardivoxacademy.com. Look at my other videos first, though. Listen to some Kardashev. See if you even like the way I sound. See if you like the way I teach, because if you don't like the way I teach and you don't like the way I sound, why would you give me your money? You know what I'm saying? But it has helped quite a few people, so something to think about. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.